The cabin lights dimmed as Flight 447 prepared for its transatlantic journey, but nothing could dim the piercing screams of the toddler 3 rows behind Emma. And she tried to focus on her laptop, on the presentation that would determine whether her small nonprofit survived another year. But the child's desperate wails cut through every thought like a knife through silk. Around her, passengers shifted uncomfortably. A businessman yanked his noise-canceling headphones tighter. A woman across the aisle shot irritated glances backward. The flight attendants moved with practiced efficiency, offering sympathetic smiles but little else. And through it all, Emma heard something that made her heart crack open. The exhausted, helpless voice of a father who had run out of options. "Please, sweetheart, please, Daddy's here." "I'm right here." Emma closed her laptop. Some things mattered more than survival. She unbuckled her seatbelt and made her way down the aisle, past the judging eyes and tired faces, until she reached row 23. The man looked up at her with red-rimmed eyes that held an ocean of grief she couldn't quite name. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with dark hair disheveled from hours of running his fingers through it. His shirt was expensive but wrinkled. His watch probably cost more than her car. But none of that mattered because in his arms was a little girl, no more than 2 years old, with tears streaming down her flushed cheeks and tiny fists rubbing at swollen eyes. "I'm sorry," Emma said softly, crouching beside them. "I don't mean to intrude. May I try something?" The man looked at her with the desperation of someone drowning and nodded. Emma didn't ask to hold the child. Instead, she simply began to hum, a melody her own mother had sung to her a lifetime ago. When the world was simpler and love felt permanent, the tune was old, borrowed from a Mandarin lullaby her grandmother had carried across the ocean from Taiwan. Words about the moon and a rabbit and the eternal, dance between light and darkness. Then she sang, her voice soft and low, weaving English words into the ancient melody. "Hush now, little one, the stars are watching over you. The moon is sailing through the night, painting silver dreams for you." The change wasn't immediate. The little girl's screams faltered, hiccuped, then slowly dissolved into whimpers. Her red-rimmed eyes, so like her father's, fixed on Emma with wonder. Emma kept singing, kept smiling, and gently reached out to touch the child's tiny hand. "Close your eyes, sweet darling. Let the darkness hold you tight. Morning's just a dream away, dancing on the edge of night." The cabin had grown quiet. Even the engine's drone seemed to soften. The little girl's breathing steadied, her grip on her father's shirt loosening. And then, miracle of miracles, her eyes began to flutter closed. Emma sang the last verse barely above a whisper, watching as the child's face relaxed into the peaceful expression of the truly exhausted. When she was certain the girl was asleep, Emma carefully stood, her knees aching from crouching. The father looked up at her, and she saw tears tracking down his face. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice breaking on both words. "I've been trying for 6 hours. 6 hours. I didn't know what else to do." "She's beautiful," Emma said simply. "Rest if you can. Both of you." She turned to go, but his voice stopped her. "Wait, please, He paused, shifted the sleeping child gently. "I'm Alexander Hunt. This is Lily. We're figuring this out together." Emma recognized the name immediately. Alexander Hunt, the tech billionaire whose face had been plastered across every business magazine for the past decade. The man Forbes called the Midas of Silicon Valley. And then she remembered the other headlines. The ones from 8 months ago. That had nothing to do with business and everything to do with tragedy. Tech mogul's wife dies in car accident. Billionaire widower left to raise daughter alone. Her heart twisted. "I'm Emma," she said, offering nothing more. Not her last name, not her struggling nonprofit, not the fact that she was flying to New York to beg for funding that would probably never come. "I'm glad I could help." She made it back to her seat before the tears came. She cried silently, efficiently, the way she'd learned to cry after her own mother's death 5 years ago. She cried for the little girl who would never remember her mother's face. She cried for the father trying to be enough when enough seemed impossible. She cried for herself, for the loneliness that had become her constant companion, and for the world that kept spinning, even when everything inside you screamed for it to stop. Emma, Must have dozed because she woke to the flight attendant gently shaking her shoulder. "Miss? There's someone who'd like to speak with you." Alexander Hunt stood in the aisle, Lily still asleep against his shoulder, looking uncertain in a way that billionaires probably rarely looked. "I'm sorry to wake you," he said, "but we're landing soon and I realized I didn't really thank you." "Not properly." "You don't need to—" "Please." He shifted Lily slightly, and Emma saw how naturally he held her, how his hand curved protectively around her small back. "You gave me the first peace I've had in months. You gave my daughter sleep. You did that without asking for anything, without even knowing who we were." "It doesn't matter who you are," Emma said quietly. "She's a child who needed comfort. That's all that mattered." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. "Most people—" He trailed off, shook his head. "Would you have dinner with us? Tomorrow night? I know it's strange, but Lily should know the person who helped her. And I'd like to repay your kindness." Emma hesitated. She thought about her presentation, about the long shot that had brought her to New York, about all the reasons saying yes was complicated. "Just dinner," he added softly. "Nothing more. I haven't met many people who lead with their heart anymore. I'd like to thank you properly." She found herself nodding. "Okay, just dinner." He smiled then, really smiled, and she saw the man he must have been before grief carved lines around his eyes. "Thank you, Emma, for everything." That night, in her modest hotel room, Emma stared at her phone. She had Alexander Hunt's number. She had a dinner invitation that felt like stepping into someone else's life. And she had a memory of a little girl's tears stopping at the sound of a lullaby. Proof that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could bridge the widest chasms of pain. She didn't know then that the dinner would turn into another and another. That Alexander would ask about her work and then insist on funding her nonprofit, not as charity, but as investment in the kind of compassion the world desperately needed. That Lily would reach for her during the third dinner, calling her Emmy in a voice that healed something broken inside her. She didn't know that 18 months later, she'd be standing in a garden with flowers in her hair, watching Lily scatter petals down an aisle, while Alexander waited with tears in his eyes and a promise on his lips. All she knew in that quiet hotel room was that she'd done what her mother had taught her. She'd shown up when someone needed her. She'd given without counting the cost. She'd remembered that we're all just humans stumbling through the dark, hoping someone will sing us a lullaby when we cry. And sometimes when you offer light to others, you find it illuminating your own path home.